Welcome back, everyone. Okay, let's dive straight into this. Today, we're exploring an absolute classic of Indian literature, Munshi Premchand's poignant and hilarious Hindi story, Gilla, which translates to complaint. We're going to look at this story not just as a piece of fiction, but as a fascinating character study of a marriage. It's one of those stories that will make you laugh, pull at your heartstrings, and maybe even make you completely reevaluate what you look for in a partner.
This brings us right to the central question of our explainer today. We're looking at all of this through the eyes of our narrator, Karuna, and she presents us with this massive, real-world paradox. See, her husband is completely revered by society. I mean, people literally see him and fold their hands in respect. They compare him to Yudhishthira, the mythological king famous for his absolute truth and righteousness. So the outside world, they think he's a saint. But Karuna, oh, she is totally exasperated. For her, living with a saint is a maddening, everyday headache. She seriously wonders if anyone understands what it's actually like to live with someone who is so perfectly, selflessly good that they just completely ignore the practical realities of their own household.
Section 1. Disasters in Daily Life. The Cost of Extreme Idealism.
These practical realities often turn into complete domestic chaos. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive gap in how they see the world. Karuna hates going to the market, right? So she asks her husband to pick up some really basic groceries, just some good basmati rice and fresh ghee. But her husband has this extreme phobia of nice, successful shops. He genuinely thinks successful shopkeepers are thieves, and the sloppy, struggling ones in the dark alleys are the only truly honest men out there. So, out of pure pity, he deliberately goes to a struggling shopkeeper who hasn't made a single sale all day. And what does he bring home? Rice that's so thick and full of pebbles that even an ox wouldn't eat it, and ghee that smells so unbelievably awful it literally gives Karuna a headache. He actually knows the shop is terrible, but his extreme idealism just will not let him walk past a poor man without buying something.
And listen, this grocery incident isn't just a one-off. It's an entire pattern of hilarious domestic blunders. He is constantly getting duped. But the absolute peak of this domestic comedy happens when they hire a servant named Gaur. Karuna desperately needs help around the house, but Gaur is incredibly lazy. He brings back rotten vegetables and basically just pushes dust from one corner of the room to another. So one day, Karuna gives Gaur a strict ultimatum to clean the living room. The next morning, she walks in and guess what she finds? Her husband, sweating in his undershirt, is under the sofa sweeping the floor. Meanwhile, Gaur, the servant, is sitting completely comfortably in the doorway, smoking a cigarette. Her husband was just trying to, help out the poor employee.
Then, there is the whole story of the gold bangle. Karuna wants a new bangle made and suggests a trusted jeweler. But no, her husband refuses. He insists that his childhood friend, who happens to be a jeweler, is the only honest man for the job. So he hands over her savings and an old gold necklace. Now look at this timeline. It takes a week for the quote-unquote design, a month for the detailing, a whole year passes because the friend is sick, and finally, after 3 entire years, the friend delivers the piece. And when Karuna opens the box, it's not gold. It's this ugly, heavy thing made mostly of cheap copper. The childhood friend completely scammed them and was fleeing the city. And her husband's response to all of this? He flat out refuses to go to the police just because he doesn't want to get his friend in trouble. Unbelievable.
Section 2. The Coat and the Beggar When Charity Hurts.
Now, while those incidents are incredibly frustrating, the story shifts to a moment that's much more earnest. It really highlights the severe personal cost of his generosity. So picture this. It's a freezing December winter. Her husband's salary is barely enough to scrape by, and he's been going to the office in this torn 10-year-old coat with completely worn-out elbows. Karuna, out of just deep love and sacrifice, pinches pennies from the household budget. She cuts back on her own needs, skips buying saris for herself, and finally manages to get a beautiful, warm, brand-new woolen coat tailored just for him. She is so incredibly excited for him to finally be warm.
But then, a freezing, elderly beggar arrives at their door. His teeth are chattering, and he's pleading for anything just to keep him alive through the night. Without hesitating for even a second, Karuna's husband walks inside, bypasses his old clothes, grabs the brand new, expensive coat his wife just sacrificed everything for, and drapes it right over the beggar's shoulders. When Karuna absolutely explodes in anger, terrified that he's going to catch pneumonia and they won't even be able to afford medicine, he just stands there in his old, torn shawl, smiling peacefully. He looks at her and says his cold wasn't bigger than the man's life. It's one of those moments that leaves Karuna completely speechless. She's so angry, yet totally in awe of his pure nobility.
Section 3. Refusing the Kenya Dawn. The Ideological Climax.
The story eventually brings us to its most serious and socially rebellious moment. We move from these everyday domestic squabbles to a massive ideological clash, right on the day of their daughter's wedding. Now, to truly grasp the gravity of this, we have to understand the concept of Kanyadan. This is a deeply rooted, highly traditional Hindu wedding ritual. It literally translates to the gift of a maiden. It is the exact moment the father formally gives his daughter away to the groom's family. As you can imagine, it carries immense cultural and religious weight.
Right as the ceremony reaches this absolutely crucial point, with all the guests watching and the priest chanting, the husband completely stops the wedding. He flat out refuses to perform the kanyadan. He loudly declares that a daughter is not a commodity or property to be donated. He argues that you can only donate something you actually own, and he does not own his daughter. She has her own rights. Well, the guests are outraged, the priest is shocked, and Karuna is absolutely terrified. She's weeping, begging him to just stop being a social reformer for one single day because she's terrified the groom's family is going to walk out and completely ruin her daughter's life.
Section 4. Fiction meets Premchand's reality, the truth behind the story.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that this fictional rebellion, it wasn't just made up for a story. It was deeply, deeply personal to the author himself. According to historical accounts from the Navbharat Times, in the year 1928, Munshi Premchand was arranging the marriage of his very own daughter. And guess what? He faced the exact same ideological crossroads as his protagonist.
Premchand actually lived out this exact rebellion. At his own daughter's wedding, he point-blank refused to wash the groom's feet at the door, which was a traditional sign of subservience. And when the time came for the kanyadan, he totally refused to do it. His wife, Shivroni Devi, actually had to step in and perform the ritual herself while Premchand just stood by the wedding canopy. The groom's family and the guests, they thought he was incredibly arrogant and rebellious. He was literally mirroring the actions of the husband in Gila, directly challenging Orthodox traditions in real time. It's fascinating.
Section 5. The final realization. Loving the flawed idealist.
Let's bring this all back to Karuna. After the ruined groceries, the lost savings, the given-away coats, and the near disaster at the wedding, how does she actually balance this scale? So the crucial point is looking at how she weighs these exact traits. On one side, yes, he is incredibly impractical, he is gullible to a fault, and he is a literal nightmare for the family budget. But on the other side, his intentions are remarkably pure, his selflessness is unmatched, and his integrity simply cannot be broken. He will never flatter his boss just to get a promotion, and he refuses to compromise his morals for convenience.
Karuna comes to this beautiful realization. She sees that she is the practical wheel and he is the idealistic wheel of their household carriage. She openly admits that if someone swapped out her husband for a rich, practical, perfectly normal man, she wouldn't even want to look at him. Despite all her complaints, all her gila, she fiercely loves his uncorrupted soul. She says she cannot bear to be apart from him for even a moment. It turns out, the very flaws that drive her absolutely crazy are the exact same virtues that command her deepest respect.
Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder today. Munshi Premchand, through this beautiful, frustrating, and incredibly relatable dynamic, really forces us to look at our own human relationships. So I have to ask you, would you rather share your life with someone who is completely practical and flawless on paper, or a flawed idealist whose pure heart drives you a little bit crazy? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.